I think I've lost the attachment to caring. It's like, so what, you know a lot about me.
Right.
If
And
that
usually
makes
I don't
sense.
care, but I think the last year that I've had specifically, not even just losing my brother, but like I'm not only grieving my brother, but I'm grieving a lot of friendships too because of like how they've handled my grief. So it's just like I've never really cared before, but now I'm kind of like seeing the envy from the other side because in my brain I'm like, oh, everybody's my friend, like I'm nice to everybody, I can do this, and in reality they don't feel the same way, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like something that I've definitely been like trying to struggle with balance, like telling people too much and not telling people enough. That makes sense.
Yeah, it
Like,
does make sense.
and that's another reason why I've been kind of like nervous to tell my brother's story, because that means like I don't ever put myself in a position to be vulnerable. Does that make sense?
You don't think?
I don't want to. Like I do, but like I don't purposely like want to. Does that make sense? Because like I can talk to people and I want them to learn from my experiences, but at the same time, like letting you know what I've been through puts me in that position, and I don't ever want somebody to feel like they can control my emotions that much. Does that make sense? And make me so upset. Like I'm very
understand.
poker face.
I understand what you're saying,
Yeah,
but
it's hard.
it is hard because I think a lot of people struggle with vulnerability and like sharing their stories or like what they're really feeling and what they really think. Because it's like, oh, that puts me in a position of getting hurt.
Right.
But I almost feel like that only can happen if you allow them.
Exactly. And I think because I was in that position with like a lot of my friends, that's where like the disappointment comes from too, especially having them for like years on end. So like I think that's something that I'm kind of like with a lot of people now, which kind of sucks because like I love helping people, making friends and all that stuff, but I had to learn very fast that not everybody's my friend, or at least people aren't going to have my back like I thought they were.
That's what I've been like struggling with here a little bit in Baltimore.
Really?
Yeah. I feel like since turning 21 though, I mean, with like being in recovery, I got sober when I was 18, and I feel like I've been really independent, like no longer really depending on my parents.
Which I get.
Focusing more on like friendships and like my spiritual and mental health.
Right.
And like through that I gained a lot of independence, and then those times where I like genuinely need people,
Right.
I like crumble. I literally cry because I'm like, I can't do it on my own.
Right.
And then I get like told, Laisha, it's okay to ask for help, but when then I ask for help, there's
it's
nobody.
like nobody here.
That's
Well, it's because
that's what gets to me.
Also depends on yourself for so long that nobody else can be there if you push them away too. Because I feel like my friends feel like I'm very like Mrs. Independent too. Mm-hmm. Like I'm the type to like invite everybody and then run off because I have so many other things going on in my brain. And it's not on purpose, obviously, but like my brain is moving 1,000 miles a minute. Everybody wants to say hi, do this, do that. Indiyah, I need this from you. Can I do this? So sometimes you just have to learn how to like hone it in and be like, listen. Because at some point we also have to take like responsibility for like, you know, ourselves. Like if we want to be independent, like in those times, like we have to go like, hey, you know, this is what I wanted. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm a hard ass. I'm not gonna lie. My brain is very wired. Like my mom thinks I'm a bitch. Like honestly, I was like, do you cry? Like, do you have any empathy? And I'm like, yes, but at the same time, like if I had to like get through it and experience all these things, like why can't anybody else? Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna cry because you broke your foot. Like, been there, done that. You feel me? Like,
I feel like I have the same headspace, and I feel like I attract people that are very emotional and like.
I hate that shit. I can't stand that shit. I cannot stand that sensitive ass shit. It pisses me off so bad, and I don't know why. It really
like
does.
It's hard for me to cry, like especially times of like chaos or like things are going bad. I'm like really cool, nonchalant, and like the person beside me or the person I'm with or a good friend, they're like in tears. I'm like, why am I attracting these people?
Yeah, like,
but I'm cool with it, and it shows me that like I can appreciate them showing that much emotion for that, because it reminds me of like, oh, that is like
that's how you're supposed to feel. Like, you're not supposed to act like a bitch. Like, yeah,
you're supposed to allow yourself to feel
right. And as much as I want to, it's kind of hard. That's something that I'm trying to get out of. It definitely is, but it can be a little rough sometimes, especially like when life has really like put you through the ringer when you're so young. Like your brain is just kind of wired where you're just like, well, keep going.
Yeah,
like
just gotta keep it pushing.
Literally, that's how I feel with everything, and it sucks, but it's good at the same time. Because like everybody's commended me for how well I've handled like Bryce dying, but at the same time, like I can't fully process it. Like it still feels like he's at summer camp. Like I'm just now starting to get over the shock and be like, damn, he's dead. Like, he's not coming back.
So to preface a little bit, me and Indiyah met at a mobilized recovery event. You spoke on the panel and you talked about how we were bringing awareness on like mental health and addiction and overdoses and how it's a real issue. Like Baltimore was just labeled the overdose capital of the country.
Yeah.
And I literally ran up to you and I was like, you need to come on my podcast. So
yes.
Here we are now.
Hi.
And I haven't had the perspective of somebody who's loved an addict on the podcast yet, because you don't personally struggle with addiction.
Yeah. Honestly, I think to this day, my mom and I are still a little bit in shock because we never really labeled it as addiction, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because he always struggled with mental health throughout his life, if that makes sense. Oh, by the way, my brother's name is Bryce. If you want to know kind of the full story, I'm probably going to tell a little bit of it, but my mom went on a YouTube channel called Texas Pictures where she tells his story, and the amount of comments, which is why it almost made my mom seem as if she was naive. And it's not necessarily that she was naive, but she was willing to help Bryce so much because not only was it, it's just the three of us really, not necessarily just the three of us, we have our immediate family, but she raised us. So she's always in the house with him. I'm the very independent child. Not that he isn't, but he stopped sports when he was in 8th grade. So, obviously you have to find your other niches. Very into his favorite artist is Juice WRLD, to give you a little bit of a, he's gamer, like to paint his nails, kind of guy. He's very, very cool.
Can you show me a picture?
Yeah, so Bryce is super cool because I always admired him for just being himself. And it's not that I was never myself or anything of that nature. I've always been myself. Mm-hmm. But it's just so cool how he can go out into the world, still be the coolest person in the room. And everybody loves him, and he just was so different from others, which I really loved. But honestly, my mom and I never truly labeled it as addiction just because it didn't almost seem like it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It would almost be hidden.
Sometimes it could be hard to notice, especially with kids.
Yeah. And remember, I was away for a year and a half at my old school before I came back to help out. And then that's Bryce, and then that's our cousin Avery. We all, three of us, grew up like siblings. I'm the oldest, Bryce is in the middle, and then Avery's the youngest.
So you have
It's just two of us, but there's 4 grandchildren on my mom's side. So we're all super, super close. It's always just been me, my brother, and Avery. And just to give you a preference of the age gap, my brother and I are 22 months, so not even a full 2 years. So when he passed, when he was 17, I was 19, and he was about to turn 18. So we would have been, we're still close in age. And then Avery is 16 now. I'm 21. We're about 5 years apart, 4 and a half, something like that. We all grew up in the same house. When my mom, my brother, and I moved to where we are now in Bowie, I think that's kind of when the teenage, we already knew that he had mental health issues because my father, he has bipolar disorder and some other things like alcoholism and things of that nature. So I'm not gonna say it was bound to, genetically predispose in one of us, but obviously that was what it was. He has a long history of that, on his side. And it kind of started really heavily during COVID. Because kids were at home bored. I know I would be asleep in my classes. Nobody heard that. I still got into college.
Still in college.
And it was just a really rough time for people mentally, physically. And I think coming into a teenager, it was his freshman year. And he went back to school one day and he was a junior, damn near senior in school.
COVID hit when I was in my junior year of high school. Yeah. So it's I didn't have my junior or senior year.
Right. All we got was a 2-day impromptu prom that we had 3 weeks to get ready for, and a graduation actually at my college outside in the football stadium. So we didn't really have that full experience. And I was actually my class president my junior year and my school's president my senior year. So I didn't get to do a thing.
Wow.
I didn't get any of the experience that I was looking for. No cheerleading stuff, no nothing. I was kind of the cliche, I loved school. I'm a nerd. I love school. That's fun
really
fact. I like learning. I like being a part of it. I actually still volunteer for Girl Scouts. I love anything school. Yeah,
I love that for you, and it's admirable, but we probably would have never spoken in high school. Isn't that crazy?
No. Wait a minute. Because I like all people.
I was a delinquent. We get along, but it's if we were in this, for example, if we were in the same high school, we probably would have never spoken.
Probably would have been besties with my brother.
Maybe, who knows?
The personality that he has, you guys definitely would have fit.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, my mom, we never really directly saw it until we kind of noticed little things like drinking and smoking marijuana. And my mom, she's like, not necessarily like, well, she's on the younger side for people our age with parents. Like, my mom is, 45? And my dad is 43. Although he's not in our life, we still, like, talk. And obviously, like, we have those close relationships where we have those conversations like, hey, I did this when I was a teenager, but it's different. So be careful, like. So it's not necessarily like she let us do anything, but we were allowed to experiment, talk to our parents, come back, figure out our experiences, and decide if that was something that we wanted or we didn't,
It was communicative like that? Wow.
Well, my mom is, so Bryce probably would have argued with you a little bit different because I do still have like Southern grandparents who probably would have looked at my mom like, girl, what in the world?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you can't parent every child the same. And although I'm not necessarily like a stickler because I still have my moments. I go out all the time. I have my fun. But like, there's certain points where you have to be like, okay, like, this is what's happening. You're not doing well in school. And we already knew that he had these issues. Yeah. So my mom had him in all kinds of, he had a psychiatrist since he was a child, a therapist, all kinds of stuff. Like, we've literally done everything in the book there is to do.
Really?
Everything.
Looking back, would you say he was, because sometimes people die from an overdose that aren't addicts. Would you, like, looking back, would you say he was struggling with addiction?
I think it was this is going to sound crazy, but a phase. And it sounds nuts, and it might sound like I'm in denial, like I promise I'm not. But, like, if you really understand, like, being in the household, so because I wasn't there for, like, a year and a half, there is, like, chunks that I missed and stuff that they wouldn't tell me on purpose. But there was, so he would, like, obviously smoke weed. That's a thing that kids or teenagers do.
Yeah, like, that's a thing. And
right.
Could be considered kind of normal in our school system today.
Right, and it's normal for, like, it's normalized in Gen Z now. Yeah. But for them, it looks a little different. But then I think my mom started to notice, like, little stuff that he would, like, attempt, like, trying to not necessarily, like, get a high feeling, but get away from feeling like, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel like this? Does that make sense? Like, knowing that he has mental health issues, not figuring out what's making him sad all the time. Like, I think that was really what he was struggling with. And so come to find out, well, actually, he meets a little girl. They dated for about 9 months. And when I say that was hell, and my mom is kind of convinced that young lady introduced him to, like, what is really like. Because I think he was like, and he would get infatuated with things. Because we found out later that he was autistic and he didn't have bipolar disorder, ADHD. He would have episodes where he would black out and not realize what he was doing, but would be doing it, if that makes sense. And it wasn't even off of drugs or alcohol. Like, this would just be pure anger, like, in his heart and his body from, like, trying to figure out what he was going through, or, like, my mom trying to, like, parent or calm him down. Because, like, there is a thin line between parenting and friend, and my mom is obviously not a friend. She's a parent. But at the same time, I think his brain wired a little bit differently and confused that sometimes. I think, like, when she would actually try to parent him, it would be like well, I'm old enough now, like, I have this girlfriend. He would just, and my mom was very kind to the girl, like, for the most part. She did everything that she could, but she's thoroughly convinced that, like, the life that she lived, she was a young foster kid, which lived a pretty decent life. I mean, huge house, nice mom, like, seemed to have nice foster siblings who were a little bit rough around the edges to her, but, and she's also a little rough around the edges, but seemed to be nice. And I think that's where my mom was kind of like, I see where this is coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
At all? It sounds kind of crazy because there's so many moving parts, if that makes sense, to the story that a lot of people won't understand. We all kind of think, like, that's where it came from. Because, honestly, I don't even know where to get that from in PG County. Like, if I were to text somebody right now and be like, hey, can I have a so-and-so? I don't even know where to get marijuana from, if we're being honest. Like, I'm so out of touch.
Isn't it legal in Maryland?
It is. It's very legal. I just don't know where to get it. Like, and I'm 21. I can go walk to a dispensary and get it. I just don't, because I have other priorities, unfortunately, at the moment, where, like, at night, I'm so tired. I just, and when I'm out with friends, okay, socially, whatever. But that's where we think he was getting it, like, from the streets and stuff. And eventually he was introduced to people that, like, were into harder stuff because of this young lady. And, like, just, COVID and being out there with friends. Like, we knew most to all of his friends, but there was still people who showed up at our door, like, when he passed, that we had no idea who he was hanging out with, which was another thing that we were all kind of like, well, who is this? Like, and why do you know where we live?
Yeah. I feel like for me, as you're kind of telling me this, I'm, like, resonating in like, ways of, like, my own addiction.
Yeah.
Because when COVID hit, that's when my addiction got really bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was at this point of like, Lord knows who I was hanging out with. My mom sure as hell didn't know.
Right.
And it was me getting introduced to different substances from friends or acquaintances. And that's when I just started spiraling and trying different things.
Even during COVID, like I think that's where I kind of like, we were bored at home. Like there was nothing else for us to do but watch TV. If we worked out, do that. Like there was TikTok. Like there was nothing for us, literally. So I feel like I don't really know exactly what true addiction like looks like, because I feel like I didn't see my brother through it, but I've seen my dad through it in a different perspective.
That's another thing. Addiction looks different for everybody, and that's the stigma with it. It's like, maybe you had this thing in your head of, this is what addiction looks like, and that's not my brother.
Right.
For example, because that was my struggle and my addiction as well. Like, I'm not banging at the drug dealer's door asking for a front. Like, I'm not homeless. I live with my parents.
Right.
Like,
right.
Like, that's why I was like, I'm not an addict. So that's another thing, is like breaking that barrier of like, what does addiction look
Right.
like? Because it looks different for everybody.
I still kind of struggle to figure out whether or not like it was. But one thing I will say is that in that YouTube video, I kind of got upset at not necessarily at the person who posted it or published it, because like it's an important story to tell so that more people understand like what that looks like and like what the science could be. But it was like people in the comments like, she was naive. I'm talking about my mom. She didn't do enough. You know, she's a bad parent. You let your kids smoke weed. And it was just like little stuff that it was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
If you knew how hard my mom really worked and really fought for both of us, one, and two, if not even harder for Bryce, because I didn't need any of the extra, you know, I didn't need that. Like I've always just been very independent, but like I feel like that was another like hard thing about me telling like everybody like how my brother passed, because even the day after he passed, like I got an Instagram request because I woke up literally, I'm not even joking, my friends, everybody was staying at my house, because my house has always been like everybody comes to stay, hang out, like sleep over, like even family and friends. But people were staying at my house, and my mom would wake up from like either 4 to like 6 a.m. in full on panic attacks, and we could all hear it through the house because like obviously her son literally just passed away like within that week. And I'm not even joking, the day after I had to literally take a walk before I punched a hole in the wall because somebody DM'd me from a fake account and said, it's his fault for dying, like he's going to hell, he's the one who took drugs. And I was like, oh. I mean, honestly, the person is lucky that I responded the way that I did. I was very calm, but I was not about to be calm or nice. Yeah. But I was just like, this is not the time. Like, it's just not the time or place. I feel like I'm very mature for my age. So, like, and a lot of people tell me that all the time. So, like, I know time and place. Like, I don't go out my way to ruin things for other people or things of that nature. And it just wasn't, like, that, adding that icing on the cake by talking to my mom or my aunt or my grandmother while everybody else was hurting. I just talked to my friends about it, and we tried to let it go. Yeah. But it's just so hard, you know? Because it was just like, dang, like, how are you going to tell me how we were raised? Like,
everybody has something to say about everything when they don't know the circumstances. Everybody has their opinion. Doesn't mean it's right.
Right. And it just hurt my feelings a little bit because I was just like, dang, like, you don't even know what the boy was struggling with. You just knew his regular self at school, and that's if you knew him. Yeah. It's if you knew him. So it was just like, geez, like, I mean, I guess if that's how you feel, like, I can't really help you or say anything about it, but just know, like, karma's a bitch. Like, that was really, like, all I could give them because I was just like, and this was at, like, literally 6 or 7 in the morning. Like, I'm not even joking.
So run me through, like, how you found out.
My friend Indiyah was actually staying over. She's from Jersey. She went to Bowie State, and I met her through a friend that I had in middle school and high school. And so this was before I got back into another 4-year. I was still in online school because I actually transferred home December 2022 because he started having issues the moment I left from college in August 21. But I didn't know this because my family would try to, like, keep it from me a little bit so that I could focus on school. I was at Virginia Tech previously. And so while I was in online school, I was working 2 jobs. I worked at Champs and Longhorn, just doing stuff. Because I've always had jobs since I was, like, a kid, so why not, right? I was working at Champs that morning, and I was kind of, like, running late, wrestling, because I was taking one of my childhood friends, which is actually used to be a neighbor, very close to our family. I took her to the train station in Largo at, like, 8 that morning, and my brother locked the door for us. And then I came back in, changed my clothes, ran out the door for work to go to Annapolis. And we're all, like, joking around with my manager at the time and, like, one of my friends that works in there. And I think I had, like, just got off the phone with, like, one of my family members or something. Somebody had called, or I had just come from, like, the back or something, picking out a shoe or talking. I can't exactly remember. But my friend Indiyah called me 3 times, and I'm like, I not necessarily like got annoyed or anything, but I was like, dang, like 3 times. Like, what does everybody want? Like, I'm thinking she's leaving the house and nobody's there and just wants to know how to like lock the door or put the alarm on or something. You know, like I said, that's the type of family we are. We let my friends come in, you know, we don't mind, just as long as they're respectful. And she calls me 3 times and she's literally like hyperventilating. And I'm like, Anya, slow down. Like, what's happening? She was like, Bryce is not breathing. And I knew something was wrong, like in my spirit, because it wasn't the first time that like he had a situation where he overdosed. Like he had literally just recently overdosed in Florida with his best friend and his mom in an airport. And and honestly, I got ridiculed for that by professors. Like it's just whole thing.
It was just
and
your friend and your brother at the house?
My mom
and
too.
Your mom.
And my mom was working on Fridays. Her old job had something called Summer Fridays where they only worked till 2 p.m. And I don't know what in me like freaked out, but I literally I think I was wearing this purse and I literally just grabbed myself and I ran out the door and I was like, Bryce is not breathing, I have to go. And they already knew that like we had like little stuff going on at home just because like, you know, we all sit there and talk. One of my other coworkers, I think like has like a sibling going through some like mental health stuff as well. So like we would all sit and talk. Like they were all just kind of like, oh my God, like I hope she's okay. And I just remember calling 2 people, my best friend at the time and my other close friend, Kayla. And I literally was just like hyperventilating and freaking out because like I said, it's not the first time something had happened, but it was like the first time like when they said like he wasn't breathing, like something like just didn't sit right.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. And I get to that house and I just remember parking any which way. Like literally I think I parked like up on a curb of like my neighbor's house. And I literally run inside and the EMTs are already there. At this point in my life, the fire, like not necessarily the fire part, the police department had already kind of know my family because they would come and help my mom calm my brother down. And like times where he needed to go to Shepherd Pratt and like either inpatient detox or like just get help like for mental health stuff, they like kind of like knew my family. And so they came and I kind of ran in the house and they wouldn't let me in his room. And I have like a 1-level house. So he's in my like old room when we first moved there. I literally just see his body like laying on the carpet, like blood there, like, and I'm just like freaking out. And then I go outside and I like breathe for a second and it starts raining. And I don't remember like my grandfather I think got there first. And then my grandmother, my little cousin buried the baby. My grandmother got there because she was watching the baby before she went to school. We have like this little immediate family dynamic. We're very, very close. Mm-hmm. And then I think like 2 of my great aunts who I'm very close with showed up. And then Avery came a little bit later. I'm not even joking. The EMT, like, they basically told us we couldn't go in his room because they were still working on him. But they had been working on him for a long time. And our neighbor actually came out to help my mom, which unfortunately their father also passed away from similar things as my brother, which I won't speak on. I'll allow them to. But like a few months ago, actually, and she was just like talking my mom through it, like, listen, Kim, they're working on him, like, that's a good sign, like, calm down, Kim, like, calm down, because my mom's like hyperventilating at this point, like losing it, because like I said, we've had incidents before, but like it's never felt quite like this. And so they literally get us in like this prayer circle, and all I can remember, I think my aunt said it was like 2:09 when she looked at her phone. And I think it was like one of my great aunts. We were literally in a circle of like 12 of us. And the guy like came and tapped on my mom's shoulder and they were like, I'm sorry, but we called it. And I just like lost it. Like I fell out. Yeah. I didn't know what I was going to do. Because he literally had just closed the door for me that morning. Like, and we've always been like very, very close. Like me and my brother have always been really, really close. We tell each other everything. Like I think like me going to college and him getting a girlfriend, things were a little rough because like he had to learn like, you know, about like respect and discipline too, still having those mental health issues, if that makes sense. And like he just wasn't getting it at times. So like we would bump heads. We were still very, very close.
Of course.
And it just felt like weird. And I think that's another reason why I'm still struggling in grief just a little bit, because it doesn't feel like he's like gone.
Grief, there's no timeline with grief.
I know everybody keeps saying that, but it's just so weird. Like it just, and I think like the first thing I did was like, I don't even remember who I called first. I just remember, like, I called and I was, like, freaking out. And I was like, oh, his graduation party was supposed to be Friday and his birthday or the next Friday. His birthday, he died on the 23rd. His birthday's on the 28th, and his graduation party was the 1st. Mm-hmm. So, like, instead of planning a birthday party and a graduation party, we planned a funeral the next week. So it was just, like, a series of, like, really eerie events. And it's the summertime. So it made it feel, like, super, super weird. And it's so funny because the number 23 is so, like, close to my family. because I'm born on the 23rd. My mom's born on the 23rd. Like, he's the only, like, little oddball out. And, of course, now his death date is on the 23rd. What's even funnier is I actually saw, since we're talking about addiction and substance abuse, you know how Liam Payne passed away recently?
Mm-hmm.
I actually found a picture on my mom's Instagram of June 23rd, 2011 of me at a One Direction concert.
That's crazy.
And I was like, wow, like, life is so eerie, and it gives you signs before you even know it.
Mm-hmm.
I was 11 at that concert.
What does that mean to you? Like, what do you what do you make that mean to you?
Little stuff that, like, my family's, like, held close, that where we know, like, he's okay. Like, I think that's another reason why I'm not, like, freaking out either, because I might sound like an absolute nutcase, y'all. Like, I'm not even joking. But my, so I grew up, like, very religious at a church. Not that we were, like, forced into it or anything. It's definitely something that I still keep near and dear to me. I've always been taught that, like, cardinals meant that, like, spirits and people were there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, I don't know if you ever heard, like, there was a scripture that somebody sent me on the day of his funeral, because it was so weird about, like, it rains, like, when, it's always been, like, an old saying that it rains when somebody, like, made it to heaven or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. And I just remember, like, not only did it, like, start raining when the guy called it, but at his funeral, when we all came out to church, it was pouring raining. But by the time we got to the burial site, not even 15 minutes away, it was, like, sunny and dry. And it was so weird. It was just such an eerie feeling. That whole day, that whole funeral, like, I honestly, I can't even tell you who I remember seeing. It was so many people. And we actually got a bigger church, like, some years ago now, but, like, when I say there was people standing in the back of that church, like, there was so many people. It had to be at least 700-800 people at that funeral. We got, like, 1,200 things printed out because my mom's job one of her jobs did the, what are they, like, obituaries?
Yeah.
And the video recording for everything. And they accidentally put the wrong address for the repast on the back, so they had, like, 600. And I think we only had, like, 2 boxes of 100 left. Mm. Like, there were so many people there. It's just been hard, like, I guess, like, still adjusting to the fact that it's just my mom and I, but I mean, I find, like, little comfort in things that I, like, see, like, rainbows, his favorite color, I see all the time, so I'm like, he's fine. He's fine. Like, I try to, like, compartmentalize it sometimes, and I'm like, he's okay.
Yeah.
And honestly, again, I'm gonna sound like a nutcase. My aunt took my mom to go see okay, she's not, I don't want to say psychic. Like, that's going to sound so
she's fucking
nuts.
psychic.
But, like, apparently, like, she told my mom and my aunt, because, you know, in what they say is that in the Bible, like, things like that aren't real. Like, can be, like, demon-like almost, or, like, not really necessarily spiritual. But honestly, again, I'm going to sound like a nut job, y'all. I can feel spirits. Like, I've felt them. I can see them in people. Like, I know my brother had, like, spiritual warfare going on. Mm-hmm. But she took her to this place, and the lady basically told her, like, I've been seeing this since I was young. I found a way to incorporate it where I can help people and still live through the Bible without necessarily, like, overstepping boundaries, if that makes sense. And I can't really tell you the whole story because I wasn't there, but she pretty much just said some things that, like, made sense to my family, and it was just like, wow, like, he's up there doing fine. Hey, like, if you need us, come visit in our dreams. But
it's weird because I had an experience where I lost my best friend passed away.
I'm sorry to hear
very
that.
Weird circumstances. But, like, me and him got high together, and it first started as, like, a very innocent friendship in, like, middle school. Yeah. And then once we got to high school, it became very chaotic and messy. And
I get it.
Then I moved to California, and then I hear he passed away. And it was, like, even in rehab, when I was in rehab in California, thought about him every day.
Yeah.
It felt like my heart shattered when I heard the news. Like, I was in the middle of the gym, and I'm just like, things went slow-mo, and I was like, it hit me, and I was like, bawled, crying for like I think it was like a month of, like, crying randomly throughout the day. Like, if I saw something, I would cry. Yeah.
That's how my mom still is, so I get it.
But I feel like now, like, I still think about him often, but it's more comforting to think about him like he's doing well.
Right. And I think that's where my brain, like, goes to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's where
Which is why I can't fully fathom the fact that he's, like, actually not here. I'm just not seeing him in the flesh, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I know he's okay, but it still freaks me out because just, like, dang, like, this is the only person I've seen come in the world and go out. Like, you know, like, not necessarily like that. Like, my brother and I have lost quite a few people before. It's a different feeling, especially when it's your only sibling. And, like, I'm the oldest, too. So, like, it also feels like as a big sister, I didn't do my job almost. And that's not necessarily the case because, like, again, like, people place their judgment all over, like, my mom, myself, like, you know, because your kid died from drugs. What the hell is wrong with you? You know, like, kind of thing like that. But it's just like that wasn't the case. Like, my mom fought really hard. I mean, the boy had a drug therapist, having an inpatient therapy, outpatient therapy, like, drug therapy, regular therapy. I mean, the boy had to piss in a cup, for God's sake, for a long time. Like, just people don't really know how, like, much we've been through either for them to, like, for our lives to get to this point.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And, like, I'm still very spiritual. I definitely still pray and believe in God, but it's definitely been hard for me to even go back to church. Sometimes it's even hard for me to make it to the gravesite sometimes. And even go back to therapy. Like, I just reached out for the first time to, like, another therapist, I want to say last week.
Yeah.
And it's been a year and some change now. It's October, end of October. It happened June 2023. And
this is really recent.
Yeah, time is flying, though. It doesn't feel like it happened like a year. It felt like it happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's still new to me, if that makes sense. Because, like, I was 19 at the time, about to be turned 20. So, like, I've had 20 years of this life of, like, with a sibling, all my little family. Like, not to say we didn't go through anything, because we definitely had our trials and tribulations. But, like, Bryce was definitely, like, a hard few years. And just for, like, him to be coming to, like, a point where he graduated school, he was starting to become happy, like, coming out of, like, the whole, I guess we could call it addiction, because I guess that's what it looked like. He was finally getting to a place where he was okay, and then it was just like, oh, guess that wasn't God's plan. Guess he's not supposed to be here anymore. Like, even after having an overdose in Florida, this lady, he was with his best friend, his mom. I think they went down there for, his best friend's cousin's graduation party. They were in IHOP, I think, before they left, and this lady that didn't know Bryce from a can of paint literally said, that boy has a demon on him. Didn't know. Like, everything's just been so spiritual in the last, like, year and a half, and it's so weird. Right.
That's crazy.
Right. But honestly, looking back, I even told my mom this the other day, like, I think I kind of know what, like, not only those eyes look like, but, like, what it looks like when somebody's, like, in turmoil now.
Really?
And even if they mean to, or it's not on purpose, or, like, they're just going through it, like, I can kind of, like, see it in their eyes, their face. And it kind of sucks, because I understand what it feels like to go through it. But there's just been so many, like, different emotions, and it's just like, geez, like, you know, you go through all this in life, and you finally get to a good point where you're comfortable, you think this is what you want to do, you're figuring things out, you're about to turn 18. He actually just went to church the week before and was so excited, was talking to the pastor about everything that he was getting ready to do. Because, like, we faithfully go to church every single week. Like, that's just, we grew up listening to gospel every single day. Like, my mom wouldn't let us listen to anything else in the car growing up, except gospel and Beyonce. I tell people that all the time, and they crack up. And Beyonce. And my mom and my grandparents still go. They're deacon and deaconess. I've had a hard time going back, which I really, like, want to. My body's so exhausted by all the things that I've been doing, trying to, like, graduate and stuff, but I don't want to be too busy for that either. So I'm definitely still trying to make my way back, but it's just kind of hard, because I feel like every time I walk in, I see a casket. It's so weird, because you never in a million years thought it would, not necessarily thought it would be you, but, like, think that this would be your life, but it is, you know?
Yeah.
It's so weird.
What do you think you've learned from this? What have you taken away from it? Because, like, now you kind of been an advocate a little bit for mental health.
Life is short. It doesn't feel like it, but in retrospect, like, these 4 years of college alone and what, like, has felt like my brother has gone through in general has just been really, like, it flew. So, like, don't take anything for granted, I think. And then, like, learning the signs is really important, because I think another thing is when kids, like, not even just kids, when people attempt to self-medicate, their brain is telling them something's wrong with them, and they need to figure out what it is. Why do these doctors keep giving me all this medicine? What's wrong with me? How can I fix it? Maybe this is going to make me feel better. And that's where that, like, does that make sense, come from? Because I'm not going to say I've been in that standpoint, but, like, I see where he was coming from when, like, not wanting to take the medicine that the doctors would give him and things like that, because it makes you feel high and, like, drugged up.
It doesn't make you don't feel like yourself.
You don't. I mean, at one point, the boy, like, even when they gave him ADHD meds at elementary school, would come home with no appetite. He would come home with a full lunch, and my mom would pack us because the medicine would give him no appetite. I can't even remember what it's
Adderall.
I think it may have been
Vyvanse.
Adderall. I think it may have been Adderall, but that's another thing. Like, doctors drugging you up at such a young age too. Like, it feels like, although people were trying to help, it also, like, failed him a little bit. You know, nobody's perfect. We're not perfect.
Yeah.
We didn't do everything right. He didn't do everything right. Not everybody around. It's not everybody else's responsibility either. So you kind of have to like take, your own suffering into account too, like how you played a part.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting just to see how everything played out in retrospect. Learn the signs, figure it out early. How can you combat it?
Yeah.
Try to figure out something like a hobby or something else that you may like that can take you away from things of that nature. Because I know when my brother was like drawing or gaming or even on Twitch, like streaming, like the first thing on his mind wasn't taking a pill or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think those things definitely like really helped keep his mind calm too. And then like the misdiagnosis, I think there's a lot of misdiagnosis with people of color too, especially because not, again, like you said, addiction looks different for everybody. So does mental health.
Yeah.
So like, I think at one point they were calling it DMDD, disruptive mood something disorder, because it's early bipolar because he technically wasn't 18 and they knew my dad had it, bipolar disorder. So they were like, oh, so like that's what this is. He's just acting out and things of that nature. But it ended up, actually, his girlfriend's social worker ended up being the one to see him have an episode and be like, none of that stuff that the doctors have been giving you or telling you is right. I have worked with children for years. That's autism. It's a very high functioning version of autism, but that's autism. And then when I really look back, it was like I said before, like it would be like a blackout. Like he wouldn't even almost remember what he was doing when he was doing it, if that makes sense. And it doesn't come from a place of like hurt or anything of that nature, but it's just like not necessarily like anger, but just like, I don't know, trying to find what's going on with him.
But it is hard with like Western medicine, like all the doctors and all the medications they give you, and even like a lot of people want second opinions. Like, I don't believe the diagnosis you gave me. It's like, I wish I could just trust the first one,
Yeah.
And a lot of people prefer Western medicine with like the medications, Adderall for ADD or ADHD, or like Xanax for extreme anxiety. But like, that's what I was hooked on. And I suffered from like really bad anxiety. There's other solutions, other remedies, but here in America, we're going to pills. And then it goes into the whole thing of like big pharma and like it's a lot of money and all this other stuff. So
I actually heard something not too long ago about how they think about like how everything is being recalled and things of that nature, but a lot of things are being put in, I guess, like food and Americas and stuff, so that people can be sick and continue to be sick, so that big pharma continues to fluctuate. And
I've heard that.
This is not. I'd hope this is not what people are doing.
With like in California, they banned like hot Cheetos and like shit in school, and like Skittles. They banned Skittles as well because like the Red 40 and all that
I didn't
stuff.
know that we banned hot Cheetos and Skittles.
Not the hot Cheetos and Skittles, but
I know, right?
It like really affects the children, and like they can show signs of like having ADD or ADHD, but they don't really have it. It's just this food, so they get put on medication.
Well, damn, how much sugar is it?
Jeez, it's not the sugar. It's like the artificial dyes, and like the natural flavors, and like natural flavors is like code word for like all these other ingredients that they put in, which aren't really natural at all.
Wow,
it's this whole big. I've
clearly been on a deep dive. I see, but that's not a bad thing. Shoot, the more you learn, the more you know, the better.
But it's honestly. Like I love horrible candy, so I do continue to consume it. But it's really bad for these kids.
I love horrible candy. Horrible.
You know, Lifesaver gummies?
Yeah.
Those are my shit.
Really?
I can't get enough. I don't know what it is about them.
So, like, I'm a big sweets girl, but not candy. I like ice cream.
You like ice cream?
Okay, I'm going to sound like an old woman, but carrot cake is my favorite. And
pumpkin
shit. Pumpkin shit. My freshman year roommate gave me a carrot cake for my 18th birthday. Like, I'm not even joking. I love carrot cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my, like, little niche. But other than that, I don't know. Like, I used to eat a lot of candy, like, as a child, but now I don't really reach for it. I like white chocolate Kit Kats are good.
White chocolate Kit Kats?
Those are good. Those are good. But I don't know. I just don't reach for candy, especially because I was like at one point on like still am, but I'm still trying to get back into it, which I think is another part of my grief. I'm trying to get back into like going to the gym and like who I felt like I was, like not necessarily that I don't feel like myself, but because I'm like trying to graduate and do a million things in college, like I feel like myself college-wise, if that makes sense. But like there's still things that I love that I feel like I haven't put my energy into that I want to. So like going back to the gym consistently and things of that nature, like just taking care of myself even in this time. Because I feel like one of my therapists says self-care, self-care, self-care. But then when I examine what that looks like, I'm just thinking about like looking presentable rather than actually like what's internal, right? Right.
And the gym can really help with that. Like, just it literally changes how you feel.
Right. And at one point, like, that was really helping. But right now, like, even when I do have the time, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
Like, not only am I not tired, but, like, not necessarily sad because it doesn't come out in that way. Like, it comes out in different ways. Like, for example, I've moved home from Virginia Tech, and I don't even sleep in my own room. I sleep in the guest room. I've slept in the guest room since I moved back in January 22. Mm-hmm. Because, like, my room is just, it's not gross or anything, but it's definitely just a bunch of, like, boxes and me moving back. And I literally only go in there to get dressed. Like, I'm not joking.
Really? Have you sought therapy after?
So
I know you just said something about recently talking to a therapist.
So I used to have one, and then I talked to one right after Bryce died. And as much as I adored her, I just didn't think she was a therapist for me. Mm-hmm. So I actually just reached out to another woman that I met recently at an event. And I'm gonna try to get on her books. I actually have to email her back after this, so hopefully it works out. But yeah, I think she could be really helpful and useful because I think what's important for me when looking for a therapist is somebody that not only can relate to me, but that's semi-young, that can understand my experiences, where I'm coming from, what it feels like to maneuver in the world as a Black woman. Like, that's all important things for me, if that makes sense. Because, like, there's so many, like, different, I guess, sectors to not only, like, my grief, but, like, going through life in general. And I'm at that, stage in my life where, like, not necessarily saying I have to, but, like, all these people are, like, starting to, like, you know, get married and shit, have kids. So I'm like, at some point, I got to pull my shit together. So I'm like, all right, get it together, girl. Let's do it.
It is crazy to see that people our age are getting married and, like...
I know, like, can I graduate first?
No, let me graduate.
Just please, slow down.
What's it like with, like, the drug scene and such in college?
I'm going to be honest. I don't know. I go to, like, you know, Looney Tuesdays, Thirsty Thursdays, like, all that stuff. But, like, weed, okay. But, like, honestly, people our age are, like, I think people used to say, like, weed is not a gateway drug. But low-key, if the weed is not working anymore, I think people are starting to reach out to other things.
100%.
And I even see people, like, that, like, smoke, like, constantly. And it's not a bad thing. But, like, I guess if that's what you need to make you feel better, sure. Like, and it's not a bad thing at all. Like, shoot, honestly, if I have the time now, I just might. But I think that, like, our generation, like we said earlier, like, kind of normalizes it, so it's okay. But, like, I want to say my second year at Virginia Tech, like, my fall semester, I think I was at a party one time, probably the best party I think I'd ever been to out there because it's nothing but mountains, not really a big African-American community. I saw, like, people doing cocaine, and I was like, is this real life? It's all I see in the movies. Yeah. So, like, I think maybe because I don't necessarily insert myself in those, like, circles or see that's something that I, like, want, because I'm always so busy with other stuff that I don't deal with that. Yeah. Especially because I was a college athlete at one point that I just really don't.
Like, you're not attracted to it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I guess,
and I see how it's affected, like, even the older I get, I think I'm a little bit more careful with my drinking as well because
you're just so responsible.
I wish. I'm trying. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But I've just seen how it's, like, not only affected my family, but, like, other families. And I don't want to get ever to a point where it's, like, I feel like I need something because, like, not only is my brother died from it, but my own dad could never really, like, get himself together to even help raise us because he struggled so much with his own internal stuff outside of mental health. So it's just, like, I don't ever want to get to a point where, like, that's something where I depend on. Does that make sense? Like, I try to keep it to, like, a weekend thing, or, like, if I decide to go to a Looney Tuesdays, like, I don't ever want to get super, super blasted where I can't get myself home. Like, you know, like, I don't know. I think I'm kind of past that. I don't know if it's just, like, the senior in college, the maturity. I don't know what it is, or just focus on graduating. I just think I'm
the way your brain is hardwired.
Yeah, and then, like, even with COVID, we were also bored. Like, you were learning how to just drink and do stupid shit.
It blows my mind, like, because, like, when I was drinking, it was just an absurd amount, and I didn't care about the consequences or my responsibilities.
Yeah.
So that's why it, like, blows my mind that, like, you're like, oh, wait, I have things to do tomorrow. I have a job to get to, school to do.
Right.
Assignments.
I mean, work can kind of feel like, especially, like, when you're so young in corporate, you don't feel like you have a lot of, like, responsibilities either. Because, like, sometimes I even find myself, like, having to ask a little bit more for some more work because I'm just, like, a little bored. But school, like, I'm not only involved in, like, activities, there's other stuff that I still, like, want to get into. And then, like, and keeping my grades, like, up is just, like, really important to me, especially because I had such a rough patch starting college, not only, like, with my brother, but changing my major, not enjoying the school I was at, like, just not being happy there. And I really did try to enjoy it. At one point, I did like it, but not being happy there, trying to make sure everybody else was okay, my brother was okay, like those were such big priorities for me, and like paying for school so that my mom, you know, didn't really have as much on her back. Like those were like really big factors to me. So it's just like now that I'm in a position where not only can we pay for school out of pocket, but like so I don't have those loans, like I have the opportunity to actually do what I want to do and do good at it, which is law, and like get the grades that I know I can get and be the student I know I can be, which I have been since moving back. I think I had like one little rough semester, but that's like right before Bryce died and everything was still, I think, at its peak, honestly. So yeah, no, I don't know. Like, I appreciate like the responsibility in my brain, but sometimes I wish I could just kind of like let loose for a day, you know?
Yeah.
It would be fun, especially being 21, but I've definitely had my moments though. Don't get me wrong. I am not perfect by any means. I've done some buck wild things to say the least, but it's definitely been a rough journey, like to say the least. Like I think people don't really know the half of it.
Yeah. To kind of wrap up a little bit, what kind of stigmas do you think you've experienced with this, and how have you not let it affect you?
I feel like a lot of people don't think that it's happening to Black kids and like minority kids at all, because a lot of them, like a lot of people are like turned away or like doesn't think it happens. Like, so for example, in PG County, we were at one point the richest Black county in America. And you don't see stuff like Black kids dying from fentanyl in PG County. That's just not existent. Like, you know, the rough around the edges, like there's some nice parts, there's some rough parts. Okay, like kids getting into it, like little stupid things, and like just getting in trouble. But like, there's a lot of stigmas about how like Black kids don't do drugs. Does that make sense? Like,
You think?
But like, I just grew up around like people that like you never just really like directly saw it, and then like once my brother was like kind of impacted by it, then like really getting to know the detective with my mom and like talking to the detective, he's like, yeah, kids on the other side of the county that like are a little bit more like Latino populated are like in schools like taking fentanyl on purpose and then getting Narcan and like shooting themselves back up like it's a game. And I was like, oh, like I didn't know that in these communities like this happens, because you know it's almost like especially like being an African American, you have to work twice as hard to get the same stuff. It's like you, like most people's parents try to like shake it out of them or make it seem like it's a bad thing, or you can't do this, or you can't experiment, you can't figure out anything. So I think that's like one thing that they think it doesn't affect minority communities, and it does. And I think another thing that I've kind of struggled with, the stigma of like I've spoken on like people, how they're raised, if that makes sense. Like it almost feels like people put a lot of pressure on the parents too, because they feel like something's wrong. And I even noticed that on the panel with the other sibling and mom duo. They were great. Like they've told their story, I guess, so many times. It's been about 10, 11 years, I believe. I remember them saying that they almost like have it down packed, but like you could hear them talk about like the judgment that they were fear that it came with, because people think like coming from a bad household or something of that nature, when really like the effects of COVID, one, are not talked about, especially on young people. And although their family didn't have to deal with that, but like mental health at all.
Yeah.
Like it's just not talked about. And people don't think that can happen to them.
Yeah. So like it's always those other people.
It's kind of just like brushed off. Like,
yeah.
We don't do that. We'll be fine.
100%.
Until you really actually like deal with it and go through it.
How are you advocating against the stigma with it?
Hey guys. Yeah, this. Well, hopefully this, because I know on the panel, everybody was like, you did such a great job, but I felt like shit after that. I was like, okay, I did not tell this story as great as my mom. Maybe I need to go read back and like live my life a little bit and just figure out exactly what happened from like the time of consciousness to now, because what the hell was that? But at the same time, everybody was like, well, you told it in the best way that you could from a sibling perspective, because at the same time, like we talked about earlier, like it didn't, for my mom and I, like we didn't really see it as like addiction. Like even to this day, my mom still questions. She was like, do you really think that Bryce was addicted? Because like sometimes it feels like he would outright tell us, and then sometimes it like wouldn't, and then like he would get the help he needed, and then like my mom would like, provide all these things for him, but at the same time it was like, was it working? Was it not working? I don't know. Like I'm like we talked about earlier, being like very level-headed and like not super like emotional, I guess we could say. I just kind of like keep going, which is not necessarily like always a good thing, but I definitely have tried to do as much work as I can outside of, you know,
I feel you
what I've advocated for in school. I've been to a few events talking about mental health and like how to use Narcan and all kinds of stuff. Like even the young ladies, like we talked about again on the panel, that they go to schools in Anne Arundel County and talk about like how to use Narcan and things of that nature. So I just think everybody's perspective is a little bit different on obviously the stigma, but I'm just hoping that as I go through this grief that I try not to blame myself or anybody else around me, because it's not necessarily anybody's fault. Like, everybody played their part as best as they could. Yeah. And that, like, you know, it's the past. And I always try to tell, like, my mom is that, like, it's the past. Like, there's nothing that you could have done differently that would not have ended up into this point, because at the end of the day, when we come into this world, we have a birth date and a death date. And no matter how you go out, you're going out. So, like,
that's true.
So, like, just try to be grateful for every moment. And I'm trying not to, like, take things for granted anymore and try to, like, see this. And I've always saw, like, signs with, like, friends early and things of that nature, like, when to cut things loose. But, like, seeing signs early now and, like, what it looks like so that nobody else has to go through, like, what my brother went through. Especially in college, it's kind of hard because a lot of people don't, like, a lot of college-educated kids not only don't talk about it, one, but, like, you don't see kids at University of Maryland outright saying that this is something that they're dealing with. Does that make sense?
That's the issue, and I want people to say it. It's like, let's own this shit, but let's get through it.
Right, and I think people are embarrassed, which is another reason why, like, I don't ever want to feel embarrassed or feel like I'm not good enough or they're not good enough, because that's not necessarily true. Everybody has their own trials and tribulations. So just trying to stay level-headed, keep praying, go back to the source every single time, and just figure out what we can do.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and your perspective. And
thank you. I hope I was of some help.
I think you were.
Okay, good.
I think you were. I really wanted this perspective on our platform because I haven't had it yet.
Oh yeah,
so it means
like
the
young
world.
people. Hopefully,
young
I can
people
try to find
and
some people.
loved like you that were affected by a loved one who struggled.
Yeah, and you guys heard how like it almost like didn't feel like it, but it was. So just try to like, I guess, see what that looks like for each person, because as we said, like, addiction looks different for everybody. And if somebody's struggling, even if it's just mental health and it hasn't gotten to addiction or anything of that nature, do the best you can. Get them all the help that you can, because it is going to be a hell of a ride. Mental health is not one thing. It's very multifaceted. It doesn't look one way. It's always going to be a twist and turn that you have to go through. Just hopefully you can catch the source and try to find some things that help you calm it down or make it work for you.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you.